Hudsucker Industries, a large corporation from New York, is in the middle of their annual meeting, where a staff member informs the directors about their outstanding achievements, including record-breaking sales and a skyrocketing stock price. This is excellent news for everyone, but for some reason, the president, Warring Hudsucker, is a bit upset. In a drastic turn of events, he takes a final puff of his cigar and commits the unthinkable from his window. Surprisingly, despite this tragic accident, the vice president of the company, Sidney J. Musburger, remains undeterred. He takes charge of the meeting and shifts the board's focus to the consequences they are about to face. Sidney mentions that Warring's 51% share is scheduled to be sold to the public within 1 month. The board's preference is to purchase the stock and to maintain control of the company, but they lack the financial means to do so. This is because the stock prices are very high due to the recent success of the company. As a result, Sidney devises a plan. They will have to reduce the stock price and make it more affordable. For this, he plans to hire an inexperienced guy as the manager and make him do everything wrong. Elsewhere, we are introduced to our protagonist, Norville Barnes, who is a recent graduate in business. He arrives in New York City with the intention of finding a job and earning a lot of money. Norville believes that he has the cunningness and tenacity to become a manager. But, to his dismay, all the jobs reject him because they require 5 years of experience. Disheartened, he walks away and enters a coffee shop. While having his drink, he looks at the newspaper and learns about a thriving corporation called Hudsucker Industries. This gives him a glimmer of hope, so he heads towards the said location. In the next scene, Norville arrives at Hudsucker Industries and gets himself hired as a mailroom clerk. The department is overwhelmed with hectic responsibilities and pays very little, but Norville has no choice but to accept it. Shortly afterward, an elderly staff member brings a confidential and highly important blue letter to the mailroom. It was sent by none other than Warner, right before his demise. The elderly man instructs Norville to deliver the letter directly to the top level. When the other mailboys see this, they get scared and run away. It turns out they are all scared of the blue letter, as it is of the utmost importance. Norville reluctantly agrees and proceeds to the elevator, but even there, the other employees stare at him in disbelief. They think that he is going to be massacred today. After a while, Norville finally reaches the top and makes his way to Sidney's office. But shockingly, instead of delivering the letter, he presents a paper with a simple circle drawn on it, claiming it to be his latest invention. However, he fails to explain the specifics of it. Matthew McConaughey would say it's a depiction of time. This leads Sidney to think that Norville is a fool. So, he selects him as a proxy for Hudsucker. But Norville, who is nervous, commits a series of mistakes. He accidentally sets fire to the first page of an important document and breaks a window, causing the remaining pages of the contract to fly away. Witnessing this chaos, Sidney rushes to catch the crucial papers and finds himself dangerously close to falling out the window himself. Fortunately, Norville manages to grab his legs in the nick of time, saving his life. In the aftermath of these events, we see Norville with a shave and a new wardrobe, taking a seat as the new chairman of Hudsucker Industries. His stupidity has got him the most prestigious job in town. In the next scene, an editor at the Manhattan Argus newspaper becomes suspicious of the decision to place an inexperienced individual in charge of such a prominent company. In order to find out the actual truth, he sends a talented, prize-winning reporter named Amy Archer to investigate Norville and uncover his true character. Later that day, Amy approaches Norville, disguising herself as a jobless woman. She lists down all of her qualifications and requests he give her a job. Unfortunately, Norville doesn't pay her any attention, so she resorts to plan B. Amy pretends to faint, leaving him with no choice but to take her to his office. After she gets up, she pretends to be from his hometown and even lies that she knows some of his friends. Surprisingly, this impresses Norville, and he immediately hires her as his personal secretary. Dumb or smart, nepotistic connections will always be the way. Following this, Amy returns to the newspaper office and crafts her story on Norville, portraying him as an imbecile. This causes the stock price to plummet, just as the board members wanted. When Norville reads the news article, he becomes furious at how he's depicted. Unaware of the truth, he instructs his newly appointed secretary to compose a response to the article's author. He also assumes that the author is an unattractive elderly woman, since her picture is not included alongside her byline. Hearing this, Amy becomes enraged, but she controls her feelings and simply says, "Yes, boss." On the same evening, she covertly infiltrates Hudsucker Industries in hopes of uncovering clues about about the newly appointed chairman. Amy makes her way to the top floor, which is located just behind a massive clock. There, she encounters Moses, a longtime operator of the clock tower. He appears to know everything about Hudsucker, and even recognizes Amy as an undercover reporter. Nevertheless, he divulges the details about Sydney's scheme, including the deliberate manipulation of the stock price for future acquisition. After gathering this valuable information, Amy brings the story to her editor-in-chief. She wants to publish this story ASAP. However, due to the lack of concrete evidence, her boss doesn't believe her at all. The scene then shifts to the company's annual Christmas party, where Norville finds himself among important people. A short while later, Sydney summons him and introduces him to the other stockholders. While interacting with a Finnish stockholder, Norville attempts to converse in their language, but unfortunately he ends up offending them, resulting in a hard punch to his face. Later on, Amy finds Norville on a balcony, nursing his injury. She feels slightly bad for him and tends to his wounds. After having a brief conversation, Amy realizes that Norville is a brilliant and kind-hearted person who is completely naive when it comes to corporate politics. This realization makes her feel guilty for hiding her true identity and betraying him. Amy attempts to confess, but struggles to summon the courage to do so. Eventually, their interaction takes a romantic turn, and they end up kissing passionately, Hudsucking their faces off. In the next scene, President Norville decides to launch a new product based on his circle concept. He presents a demonstration to the board of directors, but even this time he cannot express himself properly. This leaves the board of directors baffled, but Sydney has other plans. He believes that the product will drive down the stock price even further, so he manipulates his associates to approve it. Following this, the product undergoes various testing procedures before reaching its final form. Ultimately, it is named as the Hula Hoop and is released for distribution in stores. In the initial days, the product experiences complete failure due to its obscurity, resulting in stores reducing its price day by day. Despite these efforts, the product remains unsold, leading store owners to eventually discard the items on the streets, offering them for free. One day, a child discovers the hula hoop and starts playing with it innocently. He puts it around his waist and swings it in a proper manner, just like Norville had expected. Surprisingly, this catches the attention of several other children, who quickly rush to nearby stores to purchase their own, sparking the beginning of sales. Over time, the product gains popularity, becoming a beloved toy not only for children but also for nerds. The hula hoop disrupts the market, attracting media attention and interviews with Norville. He even receives a congratulatory call from the nation's president, commending his ingenious idea. "I was gonna play golf today, but now I'm gonna hoop instead." This immense success results in substantial profits for Hudsucker Industries, causing the stock price to soar to unprecedented levels. Unfortunately, this spells trouble for the board members, who had sold off a majority of their shares, assuming they could later buy them back at a lower price. As success grows, Norville becomes arrogant and indifferent, just like a typical businessman. One day, Amy confronts him in a fit of anger, expressing her disappointment with his decision to dismiss 80% of the workforce. She appears to have fallen in love with him and asks him to rehire the people again. However, Norville bluntly ignores her, saying, "I can do whatever I want." Hearing this, Amy bursts out in rage and resigns from her position. Norville doesn't even try stopping her. After a while, an elevator operator excitedly approaches him, claiming that he has a new invention. He brings out his product, which he calls the bent straw, but Norville just fires his ass without letting him explain himself. Later that night, a janitor at Hudsucker named Aloysius finds out about Amy's true identity and promptly informs Sydney, who in turn reveals it to Norville. The vice president reveals that Amy has written a news article against Norville, and despite their efforts, the Argus newspaper is eager to publish it. Adding to the predicament, the elevator operator who was fired earlier now claims that Norville stole the hula hoop idea from him. Sydney highlights Norville's mistakes and shares a saying: "A businessman should never hire a prisoner and should not offer second chances." He asserts that Norville, despite experiencing a brief ascent, is destined for a steep fall, suggesting that he will soon lose his position from Hudsucker Industries. However, it is revealed that this is all part of the board members' scheme to oust Norville from the company. Moreover, they hire a psychiatrist who declares Norville is mentally unstable and recommends sending him to the local psych hospital. The board of directors believe that news of Norville being confined to a mental institution will undoubtedly lower the stock price, allowing them to regain control of the company. Thinking that all hope is lost, Norville heads to a bar and starts drowning his sorrows in alcohol. A few moments later, Amy approaches him him and expresses her remorse for betraying him. She pleads for a second chance to make amends, but Norville walks away with a heavy heart, shattered by the betrayal. Later, he heads to the top of the building and has a deep thought about his life. But in a tragic turn of events, his footing slips, leaving him hanging perilously. Aloysius notices him in the situation, but he only watches coldly as Norville loses his grip and plummets off the building. During his freefall, Moses wedges a broom handle into the mechanism of the clock, which surprisingly freezes time and suspends Norville midair. Just then, warring Hudsucker appears in front of him as a divine being, urging him to read the blue letter, which was supposed to be delivered to Sydney. The letter happens to still be in Norville's pocket, so he retrieves it. He then reads the letter, which unveils the truth that Waring, despite his apparent success, was never truly happy because he had once driven away the woman he deeply cared for. Furthermore, the letter reveals that Waring intended for his shares to pass to his immediate successor as president, rather than being sold to the public. This decision was made to allow the new president to operate the company without interference from other stockholders. The successor would have been Sydney, but unaware of this, he proceeded with his scheme to install Norville as president. In the midst of all of this, Aloysius investigates for the reason why Norville hasn't fallen yet. He spots Moses downstairs and the two get into a fight. During their scuffle, the broom dislodges from the clock mechanism, causing Norville to resume his fall. But Moses acts quickly and delivers a powerful punch to Aloysius, causing his dentures to fly into the clock, once again halting its movement. As a result, Norville comes to a halt just 2 feet above the ground, and once the clock resumes, he safely lands on the ground and rushes to the bar. There, he shares his newfound happiness with Amy, and the two eventually reconcile. The following day, Norville hands the blue letter to Sydney. Upon discovering that he could have gained all the shares for free, Sydney goes mental. As a result, he is sent to a sanitarium for treatment. In the final scene, Norville unveils his latest invention, another enigmatic circle on a folded sheet of paper, which turns out to be a frisbee. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.